Hello and welcome to the Monday, December 13th, 2010 City Council Informational. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll start off with our City Council staff report from Deborah Owen, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations.
Thank you and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just one item so we can get on to business today to more let the public know that there will be probably a request to refer item number 4 on tonight's 7 o'clock agenda back to the fiscal committee meeting, as there is an audit report that is nearly done and will be probably more of that discussion will take place back in committee. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Deborah? Any questions about deferring that item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our fiscal committee report. Councilor Brown.
We met last week just for discussion purposes only on a couple of items. And since I walked in last minute, I can't remember off the top of my head what they were. Deborah, help me, please.
We talked a little bit about the approval of contracts, and
Right.
there's a state statute that we reviewed. I'll go ahead, Vernon.
No, that's fine.
And that's about what I remember.
No votes at this point. We're still in discussion phase.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Councilor Brown? Seeing none, we'll move on to Public Services Committee. Councilor Anderson.
Public Services will be meeting after the informational today. On our agenda is the Ethics Committee, or the Ethics Ordinance, and changes made to that. And also, we're going to start a discussion on administrative rules and how they're used within the city.
Any questions for Councilor Anderson? Just an update that we are having an executive session, if we so vote to choose to do that, right after this meeting. So there'll be a time where if you're here for the Public Services Committee, you'll need to leave the chambers for, well, until the doors are unlocked again, but it could take just a few minutes. It could take a half hour, but just know that that's what we're doing. Okay, we'll move on to our City Council open discussion. Any items to cover? Nothing?
Might be
Yes, go ahead, Councilor.
might be a good time to discuss a little bit about snow removal.
Well, go ahead, Councilor.
Well,
Wolfing.
I've had a few people talk to me about how well it went, and I'd like to thank the mayor and say that even though we maybe had a little late start, if we will, but they caught up very well, and thank you for that. I would notice that there is not much sand or gravel or any chemicals on the intersections, some pretty highly traveled intersections, and that might, I don't know what we're talking about there. That's the one thing I have noticed. Is there a reason for that? Or maybe Mark can discuss that. Otherwise, things look to be in good order, so thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilor Litz.
were you looking with somebody else speaking on it, Mayor?
If the Public Works Director wanted to take a second to maybe just update us a little bit on the status of snow removal
Yeah.
and how it went, and if you've got a second, Mark.
Sure, and I do, on the agenda, Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. I do have Galen coming over, and I told him to probably not stop over till about 4:30. And so if we're able to wait till the end, we can try to provide a little bit more detail, but and address salt questions, and any of those others as well. We also have a detailed timeline that takes you from the beginning, the midnight before, through noon today, and we can take you through all the operational steps. But even though the forecast changed significantly, we certainly have black streets throughout the city. And just one point to leave you on is chemicals don't work at all temperatures, and so we have to wait till they get up to a certain temperature before they can actually activate and work effectively. And so that's in some of these negative temperatures that we're in today. They don't work as effective until we get into that 10 to 20 degree range and on up. But we can answer those as best we can. Okay.
Councilor Litz.
If you're ready, let's do this. Galen, do you want to hand out the handout? And we'll just try to do this in about 5 minutes, if that's okay, because I know your schedule's full. Once Galen comes up here, we can also have a few extras to talk about. But essentially, we track and we contact the National Weather Service basically on an hourly basis when we are going into a snow event, and then as active as we need to. One of the things that's sometimes troubling is when the National Weather Service calls us. And we were down at the street department when they called just after 5 in the morning and said, this is going to change to, this stone is actually going to park over the top of us, and we could get, instead of 1 to 4 inches, we're probably going to get 6 to 8 inches. Now, normally when we go into an event that's 1 to 4, we'll send a sander and a motor grader out on every route. And that kind of accumulation over a long period of time can stay ahead of the emergency snow routes. Well, once this significantly changed, we started to receive more than an inch an hour. We put 2 motor graders and a sander out on each route, plus we called in all of our contractors. So we've got not only our entire fleet out there, but we've got 30 more contractor blades coming to us. But essentially, when you start to see accumulations of greater than an inch an hour, you've got to wait till that accumulation pressure slows down before you're really going to see noticeable improvements on the roads. And so even with all the changes, and it takes a little while for the contractors to activate, the roads are in good shape today. I understand that, we've got a pretty high expectation in our city for snow removal, and even if it's a blizzard, we should be able to drive through and across the city. Some of that just takes some patience as well to make sure that the plows are safe and also that the work can get done. So anyway, I may have Galen just add a couple of points to this, and then if you have questions, we can best address them. Galen?
Galen Huber, Street Utility Manager. I'm just going to go over this real briefly, just hit some high points here, which would be of interest, and if you have any questions, you can certainly ask me any questions. Basically, like Mark said, we were forecast at midnight on Friday night. It's still at the 2 to 4 inch range. We were gearing up for 2 to 4 inch range. At 5 a.m. that morning, we were upgraded to 6 to 8 inch. We upgraded at that particular time with bringing in equipment and manpower. Probably the key things for us was Saturday was 40-mile-an-hour winds, inch an hour, ending up with 7.6 inches. That was really dry. That stuff blew around and was probably the worst conditions that you could possibly think of as far as trying to keep something open. We worked really hard all day on Saturday to try and keep the streets, emergency routes open so that we keep police and fire and ambulances running. That was my key priority for that day, and keeping those things safe. Probably the key things you want to take a look at is on when we started getting into the emergency or into the residential areas. Basically, the snow slid up about mid-afternoon on Saturday. At that point, we were starting to make some gains on the emergency routes. That at 7 o'clock that night, we actually got into Zone 3. We ran their press release at 5, and we got into Zone 3, and we worked Zone 3 through. By the next day, by Sunday at noon, we had just about the entire Zone 3 completed. 92% of the city area of Sioux Falls is in Zone 3. By noon on Sunday, we had almost all of it completed, with the exception of the west side of Sioux Falls, where we got massive drifting because of the wind that was blowing in there. Contractors were still working on that yet on the afternoon, but we got that cleared. That small area cleared on Sunday afternoon. The next key date time is on Sunday morning at 8 a.m. We got into Zone 2. We finished north-south Zone 2 in 8 hours at 4 o'clock that afternoon. Yesterday evening, we started in Zone 2 east-west. It took us till 4 o'clock this morning to finish Zone 2. By rush hour traffic this morning, we had every street in the city of Sioux Falls plowed. We're continuing to pick up snow, and we have some areas that we're dealing with as far as treating, as far as being slippery on hilly and intersections.
Questions for Galen?
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Galen, I got up early Saturday morning and was driving around due to a number of circumstances in my life, and I did notice that things were pretty bad on a lot of the streets, and there were streets that had been untouched. And what was going through my mind was that I remember the big event we had last year, right before Christmas and during Christmas, where we kind of got a little bit behind and the streets got sort of narrow and a few things like that. And I just didn't want us to go there, but, you guys had the time to get it done, and it's looking pretty good out there, outside of like what Rex said, of it having some icy spots, and they'll be identified. I think a little bit of warm weather will take care of some of them as well. I'm looking here, and it says the National Weather Service, and, within 4 hours later, they're going from 2 to 4 to 6 to 8. Is there a better alternative out there? I know Bob Meester with the county, he has a private weather service that seems to be right on all the time. He knows exactly when to check his trucks out. Do you know of which weather service I'm speaking?
We take a look at all of the 3 TV stations here in town and the National Weather Service. The National Weather Service is the one that we use with the 3 television channels that we have. And what happened was, and it's not uncommon during winter months, is as the front comes through, what happens is due to a pressure gradient down below, like in Iowa, we get wraparound effect. And that's what happened on Saturday for us. As the front came in through Sioux Falls, it was coming into Minneapolis, and then we got a wraparound into the afternoon, and that wraparound stalled. Now, as good as meteorologists are, they can't ever pinpoint it exactly, and they didn't realize it was going to stall over Sioux Falls as long as it did. They figured it was going to stall, and that's why they were going to the 2 to 4 inch, but it stalled a lot longer, and we ended up with 7.6 inches on it. So I don't know if there's any one person could have been able to predict that. They have historically been very good at what they've been telling us. They miss it sometimes, just like anybody does. And when you're trying to predict something that nature's throwing at you, I think it's hard to really nail it down and hit it 100% all the time. So I don't know if there's a better system out there. We can certainly take a look at a better system. But again, when you get this snowy wraparound effect, and the other thing is, about Saturday morning, about 11 o'clock, the Weather Service called me and said that we're having a thunderstorm effect on the southwest side of Sioux Falls. Anytime we get thunder associated with snow, it usually means really heavy downfall amounts, and you could go from 1 inch per hour to 2 to 3 inches per hour in a very short time. And they said, keep an eye on your southwest part of Sioux Falls.
Oh, yeah. I had conversations with Bob Meester, who runs the county highway department. He's got a little bit wider of an area, and he says that he has a private subscription that he uses that is much more accurate.
Okay.
Maybe that's their investigation.
No, Bob real well. I can certainly talk to him on that.
Very good. And then I'd like the general public to know that, we do have a new mayor, and I heard some comments about, well, I'll bet the mayor gets his street scraped out right away. And I found out that's not true, because one of his neighbors called me and said that he was stuck in front of their house Saturday. And so the mayor suffers from that as well as we do.
Yes, and my daughter and my wife got stuck, and I had to pull them out, too, later that afternoon, in very close proximity to the mayor's house. So trust me, it doesn't work.
You do it with your Harley?
Councilor Aguilar. Oh, Erpenbach. Sorry.
Thanks. Galen, I appreciate everything that the street department has done. It was pretty amazing to sit in my house all weekend and watch this all go on. But would you remind us, we made just a slight change in the snow removal policy, and I'm not sure that it has been reported correctly, and I'm not sure that we're all remembering it correctly. I know it was in the Argus this morning, and I appreciate that, but would you state for us again, what is the difference? Are we plowing differently? Are we pre-treating differently? What is it that we're doing?
Okay. Let me divide it into chemicals and plowing. Plowing, we're absolutely not doing anything different. If this snowstorm would have happened a year ago, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, we've done it exactly the same way. That we did not change any way we plow. The misconception with chemical usage out there is, first of all, we've been looking at a different type of liquid that we mix with our salt for the last 2 years. It just so happens that during this snow season, we come up with a new chemical that we're going to use. This new chemical, instead of mixing 12 gallons per ton of salt, we mix it with 8 gallons per ton of salt. So there's a cost savings in the fact that we don't have to use as much liquid. And when you're paying the price that I'm paying for liquid, anytime I can drop 1, 2, or 4 gallons, it's a dramatic savings for me. The other thing is that we want to make sure that our timing is critical for us when we put this chemical down. We want to make sure that we time it just right so it's actually going to do what it's supposed to do, and not just lay out there and not do any good at all. So we've keyed in on the timing of when we can put this stuff down. Now, there's been a lot of talk about why I didn't put chemicals down during this snowstorm right in the beginning. If I'm going to put down this really expensive chemical and plow it off an hour later, we've never done this. We've never done this in the last 5 years I've been down here at Street Department. Every time we get a large major snowstorm, we've never put chemical down because I'm going to plow it right off. I'm putting chemical down right now as we speak, starting this morning, since we've had the streets cleaned, so that it burns it off. But my chemical is only good to a certain temperature. I can't, when it starts getting below zero and I have wind chill factors of minus 20, my chemical doesn't work, so we don't put it down then either. So if there's an icy street and it's 20 below zero, I can't put the chemical down. It does not work. So I have to wait till the breaking point, so I know where that's at. It's right around zero. If it gets below zero, it doesn't work very effective at all. In fact, it can make it slimy, and so I hesitate to put it out there. So, but today we've been working on putting chemical down on intersections, on hilly areas, and we'll be treating them all the way through the night. We're on 12-hour shifts since Friday night at midnight. We're continuing 12-hour shifts through at least tomorrow yet.
I appreciate
24
that.
hours a day.
Good. That's awesome, Galen. The thing that I want people to hear in what Galen is saying, so when he talks about the expense of chemicals, he talks about how much money he has to spend on it. He uses the word I, and he uses the word we. When he's talking about our money, he's talking about taxpayer money, and Galen takes it very personally, and he's managing this as well as can be expected, and I appreciate that, and I'd pass that along to your staff members as well. We appreciate your work.
Well, one thing about the new chemical that I'm excited about is it's 70% less corrosive than the calcium chloride that we're using. It's a mag chloride product. And the other thing is that it's proprietary, that the chemicals they mix with it, but it's supposed to cut at the same temperature that calcium chloride does. The big reason that Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, all those states use calcium chloride is because it works very effectively at colder temperatures. This product is supposed to work at that same low temperature and be 70% less corrosive and be less harmful on plant materials. Salts and plant materials don't get along. Mm-hmm. And if it's less harmful on plant materials, the grass and the parking strip, and 70% less corrosive, it's a good thing for us too.
Awesome. Thanks, Galen.
I still have some of the old calcium chloride from last year left. I'm using that up, but in January I should have that gone, and we'll be using this new product, and we're hopefully going to be right on line with it. So,
Any other questions for Galen or Mark? Mark, if I could ask again, help us understand exactly when residents or citizens are supposed to have their sidewalks cleared. When does that timeline start and begin? What is the...
Once the snow accumulation stops, they've got 48 hours to clear their sidewalks. And if someone drives by, a neighbor, anyone walks by after that 48-hour period and they haven't, then community development and public parking actually takes that call. They go and inform the resident that they've got 24 hours from that point when they knock on their door to clear their sidewalk. If it does not get cleared, they commission a contractor so it can get opened up. So it's 48 hours from the last snowflake.
You know, I wonder if there'd be any value to having that posted someplace during the winter on our website or something that, am I reading this right, that 7 o'clock Monday night, tonight, would be that deadline? When did the snow stop? Or help us.
The majority of the snow actually stopped at about 2 p.m., but the fact, and Galen had mentioned that, it was still blowing fairly hard, and so you really couldn't tell that the snow had stopped at that point. That's why we waited until 7 o'clock to go into the neighborhoods, just to give it a few more hours. But technically, I think we could comfortably say when we start plowing Zone 3, that would give residents an extra 5 hours on that timeline. At 7 o'clock, that should really be probably the start. It gives them a little bit more of a window in this event because it was so windy out that people really couldn't go out at 2 o'clock and shovel their sidewalk. So, okay.
Just up for discussion, I know I've been here a couple of years, and it's always been later on when we have citizens come forward and complain about the bill that they'd received. I think we'd be better off if we were just crystal clear about that exact timeline. So, if it's been 48 hours and it hasn't snowed it's reasonable to expect you should have it cleared. And if another snow event occurred in the last 24 hours,
And that happens.
that happens where you get it stops and another storm comes. But essentially, what you're saying, I want to make sure everybody gets 48 hours of no snow after an event. You should have your sidewalks cleared.
That's right. And I think, let me work with Darren Smith, and we'll make sure that that date is, and that time is crystal clear.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Councilor Henteman has one.
I might just also remind the citizens that if you have a fire hydrant that got covered up with snow, just be a great citizen and shovel out around the fire hydrants. It'd be very much appreciated by the fire department.
Okay, great. Councilor Litz?
Mr. Chair, thank you. There was an article in the paper this morning that talked about, that touched on the snow gates, but in there was an interesting comment from a lady who was 75 and her husband was 80, and she was hoping that the snow gates would help out because he has to go shovel it. And, along with getting that word out about when you got to shovel sidewalks, if somebody's on the elderly tax freeze or they're disabled, there's means by which the city provides people to come out and shovel those sidewalks. And I was amazed she knew about snow gates but did not know about this free service. And I think it behooves us to get that word out to those who need it.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? Any other open discussion items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move right on to our presentations with the Event Center with Mayor Mike Huther. Mayor, welcome.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the City Council again for this opportunity to speak to not only you, but also to the people of Sioux Falls. This is a very, very big deal for our city. And in a way, we're going into some uncharted territory for Sioux Falls. And as we do this, I tell you, there's more and more excitement and more energy that is built along this journey. Again, Sioux Falls, we've never gone this far before on this particular topic, even though we've been talking about it now for well over 12 years. There is certainly more work to go, and we'll continue to talk to you about that, but we certainly believe that the process is strong. With today's presentation, we are going to go through that process with you, not only where we've come, but also where we plan to go. To start off that presentation today, I'm going to bring back Mark Cotter, and then we'll have some others that will speak to you as well, and then I'll come back and wrap it up. Again, Sioux Falls City Council, thanks for the opportunity.
All right. City Council, Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to do just a few slides that focus on the architect and engineer RFP and ultimate selection, as well as the update on the CM at risk RFP and ultimate process to move towards selection. So back, again, just a quick look back on October 15th, we issued the RFP for teams to review and submit. One of the key things that we asked for is that a national firm partner with a local architect and engineer. We received 10 proposals. Ultimately, we shortlisted down to 3 firms and made a selection last week. And one of the key things that we looked at when we evaluated those firms was not only their experience, how they structured their team, and how their overall approach was. I think we're very happy today to tell you that we're on schedule. December 10th, we concluded that process and introduced and ran a press release that selected St. Combs Deflis and Koch Hazard Architects. And today we want to give you a chance just to introduce those 2 principals. Next slide, please. And have them share with you. They've also have a number of people that they have on their team. It's heavily structured with local professionals to not only meet we had a minimum threshold set that 15% of the work would be done by local professionals with a goal of 25. They've structured a team and approach that will meet nearly 50% of the work on the architect and engineering for this work that will be accomplished by local professionals. So I'd like to now bring up the two key people on that team. Don Deflis from St. Combe Deflis. He's the Chief Executive Officer. And from Coke Hazard Architects, Jeff Hazard.
Thanks, Mark. We're excited to be here, needless to say. Just to give you a little background, my name is Don Defliff, CEO. Our firm has specialized in sports and arena and multipurpose design for the past 30-some years. We've designed over 40 arenas, and we've specialized. We've done a lot of large ones, such as San Jose's arena, the HP Pavilion, Ohio State, Fresno State, a lot of big ones, but we've really concentrated on the mid-sized markets. In the past, in 1999 and 2000, we worked on a study for Forward Sioux Falls for an arena, which the conclusion was Sioux Falls should build a 10 to 12,000 seat arena. Then in 1995, we hooked up with Jeff Hazard from Coke Hazard, and together, along with Arc Inc., we did a study for the arena here. And again, the recommendation was that it should be a 12,000 seat arena. And so now we're excited to be back. Jeff, we hooked up with Jeff because he's got a great level of experience in the area, great designs, a lot of aesthetic design, and really talented. So we're excited about that. Jeff?
Jeff Hazard, Coke Hazard Architects. And we're very happy to be teamed with Don and his group. They bring fabulous national, international expertise and a real interest in creating an integrated team between the national and the local firm, where we can take advantage of the best of what both of our firms has to offer.
As Mark said, one of the approaches we took is to try to combine that, so we will have a whole list of engineers that have a great deal of experience on arenas, but we thought it was important to maximize the involvement from Sioux Falls. So I wanted to introduce a few people just because you'll probably be seeing us over and over as we come back, but I wanted to let you know who was working on it. Mike Harvey here is our project manager, and he's a principal in charge with me from St. Combs Deflis. He's a native of Sioux Falls, and so we're hand in hand going to be doing this together for our office. And then the other local people, I'll just have them stand up and introduce themselves, if I could, for 1 minute, so you know which local firms are involved here.
Good afternoon. I'm John Brown with Stockwell Engineers. We're going to be being involved with the site design, anything outside of the building, and landscape design associated with that. My name is Norm DeWitt with Associated Consulting Engineers. We're a mechanical electrical local firm. We'll be doing or assisting with the mechanical and electrical design of the facility.
My name is Brad Schopp, electrical engineer with Associated Consulting Engineering. Be assisting with electrical design for the facility.
I'm Greg Hannestead with SCA. We're a local structural firm, and we'll be happy to work with Don and Jeff on the project also.
I'm Joe Hinken Schultz. We're a local advertising, marketing, and public relations firm, and we'll be handling public communications.
I'm Teresa Jackson with Hinken Schultz and lead account executive on it.
So our goal from here on out, we're going to finalize and quickly finalize a contract with the city so we can get going on this. I think you've all read the RFQ, so we responded to that. Our goal is to, first phase, look at the two different sites or the two different areas, do it. What we promised the city is we would do an objective analysis and get into the details on those sites, and then also sit down and have a very public process where we decide what the key features are of what this event center needs and what it could look like, so it's a real asset to Sioux Falls, and that's our goal. And so the goal also, what we promised the city, is that if you wanted to bring this to the voters in November, that we will be ready to allow that to happen, so that can happen on that time frame. At least we're available to do that. If you want to delay it a bit, that's fine, but we'll be available if that's the goal of the city.
Okay. Thank you very much, Don and Jeff, for coming here and sharing your team with us. Next slide, please. Well, as we talked, that the original RFP went out in October 15th, and it's been a very methodical process for not only the proposing teams, but then the initial evaluation of them to reach a short list of 3 firms to ultimately interview and get to the point that we were at last week. Just to iterate for a few minutes on the process, we'd like to bring one of the evaluation team members forward, Frank Hughes. He's the Director of Facilities of Augustana College, and he'll take you through the process that the team undertook to reach the final result and select this firm. Frank?
Thank you, Mark. Frank Hughes, Augustana College. A couple of months ago, I received a phone call from Mayor Huther, and his first question to me was, "Are you sitting down?" And I was a little put back by that, but I assured him that I was, and then he then proceeded to extend an invitation to join the Evaluation Task Force Committee for the Event Center. And readily accepting that invitation, and having said that, I'd like to state now that it's been a very rewarding experience. I've been honored to be part of it, and thank you, Mayor, for extending the invitation. As Mark mentioned a little bit ago, we did issue the RFP, or the city issued the RFP on October 15th. Shortly after, on November 12th, we received 10 proposals, 10 very good proposals, and we proceeded to review these proposals at the main library on November 15th and November 16th. We had a 2-day period where we as individuals could spend as much time as we needed to thoroughly and exhaustively go through each proposal one by one with a set evaluation criteria to establish a score for each proposal. We then met as a group on November 17th, again at the main library, for open discussion with the entire evaluation team. Each proposal was reviewed and discussed by the group. At the end of the discussion, each team member was allowed the opportunity to revise their preliminary rankings before they were submitted and tallied. The top 3 proposals were then identified, and the firms were subsequently invited to make formal presentations to the evaluation team on December 9th. A random drawing was used to determine the order of the presentations. All 3 firms were interviewed, and after the presentations were complete, the evaluation team met for group discussion. At the conclusion of the discussion, each evaluation team member individually ranked the firms 1, 2, and 3, and the rankings were then tallied to determine the selected firm. I'm confident that the city has chosen the best designed team to lead us through this very exciting process. I would like to thank all 10 firms for submitting proposals. I know it is a time-consuming and a costly process to assemble and present quality proposals. We thank them all for their hard work. And if you'd like, I could spend just a moment, why Sink Combs Deathless along with Coke Hazard Architects. And it has already been mentioned, really their expertise and their demonstrated success with mid-size event centers, similar to what we want to build here in Sioux Falls. That was paramount. That was right at the top of the list. They had excellent discussion, presentation of how important components such as rigging, temporary electrical power provisions, back-of-house provisions, such as loading docks, those types of things, not the glamorous aspects, but the things that really make it work on a day-to-day basis. Those are very important in order to maximize the revenue stream by attracting more concerts, more tournaments, and so forth. Their involvement with previous studies, that was a factor and was an important reason for their selection. Their ability to quickly and objectively evaluate multiple potential building sites. That's task number 1 right out of the gate, is to take a look and objectively prioritize and zero in on a site. We have 45 days to do that. Their local design team member involvement was very important, as we just were introduced to all the local, or many of the local team members. As a demonstration of their initiative, they've already created a website for the project that may be used to inform the community of the process about to begin. As we all know, without support from the public, the effort to construct a new event center will not be successful. So that communication is very, very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank, and also members of the evaluation team. It's been a very valuable discussion that we've gone through, and certainly all 10 proposals were solid. The top 3 that were invited to shortlist had extremely high amount of talent and experience, but we do believe that we've selected the most qualified firm to take us forward. One of our next steps now with Sink Homes, Defless, and Coke Hazard is to develop a very clear scope of work, negotiate a contract, and with that we are currently identifying a firm that can assist the legal team in contract review and advisement, because as we go forward now with this architecture firm, as well as the CM at risk that I'll provide you an update on, they'll be 2 of the largest contracts that this community has negotiated. We certainly want to do it right. Okay, I've got just 2 slides to go, and it's to recap the constructor, and it's the CMR Construction Manager at Risk RFP schedule. That went out initially on November 15th with a goal of having a firm hired by the end of January. We're right in the middle of that process. Last week we received the proposals. We had 5 teams propose on this project, and this week starts that same process that Frank started, where we'll go in, more of a classroom environment at the library, sit down, read thoroughly through their team structure, their approach, to eventually get to a point where we'll invite up to 3 of the constructors to come back for interviews. Next slide. Here's a list of the 5 firms, 5 teams that have submitted on the construction part of the event center. Graham and Gil Haugen, joint venture. Hunt Construction Group and Fegan Construction. Mortensen Construction. Sioux Falls Construction is a joint venture with Henry Carlson and J.E. Dunn Construction. And that concludes my update on the architect and engineer and constructor RFPs. Mike Cooper.
Good afternoon, Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. I want to give the council and the community an update on our economic and development impact analysis task as part of this whole process. Next slide. Last month we talked about a proposed scope of work that this analysis would include. We talked about that the city would undertake an economic and development impact analysis with regard to the new event center at both the convention center arena site and at a downtown site to be determined. And we talked about having this analysis consist of 2 parts. The first part would be to look at how the economic impact relates to the potential location being considered. And again, now that we have our AE team selected, it's their task over the first 45 days of their contract to look at the best location out at the convention center arena site, as well as the best location for a downtown site. And then the second component of the economic and development impact analysis will be to look at the potential for added development within the vicinity of each of those 2 locations that we have identified. Next slide talks about our timeline to conduct this economic and development impact analysis. The goal is at the end of this week, on December 17th, that we'll be able to issue the request for proposals. The deadline for questions from potential firms would be December 30th, and the proposals will be due to the city on January 7th of next year. We anticipate selecting the firms that will be interviewed by January 12th of next year, and then the interview dates, we're looking at that area between January 26th and January 28th. The city would be issuing a notice of intent to award a contract to the selected firm around the end of the month of January, and we would complete a contract by February 11th, which again would tie in with the timeline that the AE firm has been given, that by about mid-February, they will have gone through their site analysis for both the convention center arena area as well as the downtown. We expect that the economic and development impact analysis will take up to 60 days to complete. The last key part of this process is, of course, since we are asking for proposals, that we want to have another evaluation team look at those proposals with the anticipation that we'll get more than one. We have selected a team that will consist of 4 city staff and 4 community representatives. The evaluation team that we have selected includes Erica Beck with the City Community Development Office, Tom Bosch, the General Manager of the Downtown Holiday Inn, myself as Director of Planning and Building Services, Tom Huber, the Acting Director of Finance for the city, Lynn Keller-Forbes, who is the Executive Director of the Southeastern Council of Governments, Cindy Morrison, who is the Vice President of Public Policy for Sanford Health, Michael Roach, who is an Assistant Professor with the School of Business and Information Systems at South Dakota University Center, representing Dakota State University, and Darren Smith, the Director of Community Development and Public Parking. Again, this is the team that will look at the proposals and make a recommendation for a final firm that we will work with on completing that economic and development impact analysis. Again, tying that in so that we have that done in time for the timeline to continue with the AE team. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mayor Huther.
You've allowed us the opportunity to speak to you over the last couple months, and we certainly appreciate it as City Council. I think that it's been opening up the dialogue with the people of Sioux Falls in a very productive way. We've touched on so many different things thanks to you, and that is parking in downtown Sioux Falls. Again, in November, we had our first event center update. Then we updated you on the railroad relocation project in downtown Sioux Falls, developmental efforts in downtown Sioux Falls, today's event center update, and then again in January, we'll be back here again, thanks to you allowing us this opportunity. And then in the near future, we're also going to talk about the financial status of our great city, and try to give you some comfort that we can ultimately make an investment like this for our great city. I will tell you, and I mean this in all sincerity, we're working dang hard to keep you folks informed. We really are. We're trying to be transparent with everyone on this journey. I tell you, I would challenge anybody to find another RFP process, to find another project in our great city that has really opened up to the level that we have. You've demanded it, and we respect it. I think that ultimately it's going to have a great payoff for all of us by being this open, by being this transparent, by letting the people know all the details surrounding this incredible investment that ultimately we're going to make. We're going to continue to try to educate you the best we can. And again, we're going to face challenges. We are. And we'll address them and we'll face them head on, like city councils in the past have done, like mayors in the past have done, and like the citizens of Sioux Falls have done. Now, not everyone's going to agree with every answer that we come up with. And ultimately, we know that. We know that when we were hired for this great job. But we are trying to reduce these assumptions, and I think that that's a good thing. We're trying to provide you concrete data, and as well as we're trying to do all this in an organized and, yes, easy to understand fashion, because it's a very, very difficult topic, and we are trying to be prudent ultimately with the taxpayer dollar. There's a lot of topics yet to come. And I'm going to continue to show this slide until we build this event center for our great city. We're getting there, Sioux Falls. We are. We're getting there, but we've still got a long, long way to go. And ultimately, though, I'm very confident that we'll pull together and make this happen. I do want to thank you for your time, Sioux Falls City Council and citizens of Sioux Falls. There are good things yet to come. We're not done, and we're going to enjoy this journey on every step of the way. We do want to open it up for any questions, and we're here to answer them the best that we can. Councilor James.
Any questions for the mayor or his staff? Seeing none, I'll ask one.
Please, Councilor James.
The RFP for the Economic and Development Impact Analysis will be completed, decided in February 11th. You'll decide on that group. You'll choose the organization who will start that. You'll issue the contract then. It takes about 60 days to do that, so that sometime in April that study will get completed in mid-April, most likely, right?
Yes, sir.
What is the architectural firm doing from now until April?
Very good.
If they don't have that site kind of chosen.
Well, and those are some of the things that we'll tie down initially. We'll write a good scope of work and ultimately negotiate a contract. But there's some work that we've said in the past that can happen in parallel. We would expect that we'll come back to you and give you a full presentation on what that scope of work is. But essentially they can start because they have a good sense of finding the most suitable and feasible location to put it at the Arena Convention Center site, and then looking at a matrix of sites downtown to identify that. One of the reasons we wanted to have a little bit of overlap with the economic study is that there's some pre-work in that study that can be done before the comparative analysis is actually done. But we would expect that in many cases they'll be able to run in parallel, but there will be a point in time where the architect and engineer will have their comparative analysis done. They'll have their matrix of both sites, and they'll hand it over to the economic team. This team certainly expects that 45 days is adequate. They communicated that to us in their presentation, and so it'll be our job as we negotiate the scope to best time their work and the RFP. The key we want to do is, we know that many of these things they take time developing the RFPs, soliciting the proposals, selecting interviews, and so the next key step with the economic study is to get it out on this Friday.
One thing I want to make very, very clear as well is that we're not going to rush this process. We're not. We are. One of the things that I'm concerned with is I don't want to give an impression that we have to do everything to meet a certain date to build this facility by such and such a date. That you have expressed that concern. I've heard it loud and clear. It's my concern as well. We want to do this thing correctly. And where I'm gaining a stronger comfort level all the time is that, number one, we are achieving some of the initial target dates that we've set, as well as I'm hearing from some of the professionals that are out there, folks that have been in rodeos like this before, such as Don Detlefs and folks like that. They are giving us a comfort level that we are on the right path, that we can ultimately make this happen if that's what the people of Sioux Falls decide. But at some point in time, and you can see us doing this, we are moving it away from those employees of city government, including the mayor, and we are going to move it to the experts that do this for a living. And that's the right thing to do. It's the prudent thing to do. It's the responsible thing to do. So I think that ultimately what we're excited about is that hopefully we'll do less talking and we'll let the experts do the talking for us. And so you'll be engaging with them more and more as these contracts are signed and as they begin their work. Councilor Jameson, good question. Any others?
Councilor Brown.
Actually, that's a good segue, because I do have some question for Mr. Detlefs, if you're available, please. First of all, you indicated that you have a history behind the recommendation of 12,000 permanent seats for the facility. Could you just give me a brief overview of why you recommend 12,000 seats for permanent seats for Sioux Falls?
Just for some background, the first study in 1999, we were hired by Forward Sioux Falls. We were with CSL, Convention Sports Leisure, as part of that, so they do the economic part. But what we found is a market like Sioux Falls, the real question is you can either go for a smaller arena, like a version of what you have now that's greatly updated, and you will maintain those same level of events that you have. Or you can go and build a bigger building, in which case you can attract larger type events, such as the larger family shows, larger concerts. And it seemed when CSL certainly interviewed a lot of people in the community, that was a strong emphasis that you've seen in other mid-sized cities, and so they based it on that. I mean, you could always, as a city, you could have made a choice to do a smaller one, but then you'll never have some of those high-end concerts and those type of views. So what we said in our interview is part of the key is to not only make sure this building is comfortable for those large events when we go to design it, but also for mid-size and smaller events, because a city the size of Sioux Falls needs to attract both. So that's one of the recommendations we had. And when we started the first study, there was a strong emphasis, or at least a leaning on that group, to do something similar to the Fargo Dome. And we did the Fargo Dome, and the reason the Fargo Dome was built is they had the NDSU football team, and it makes it very difficult to make that building work, even though it's great multi-purpose for the smaller events. So we recommended that it was a far better scenario for Sioux Falls to do exactly what we'll be studying now. So this was the third study, this last one we weren't involved in, that basically came to the same conclusion. 10 to 12,000, preferably 12,000 if you can, afford it, as you're recommending now, that is the ultimate and best size for Sioux Falls to build a building.
What other cities of 150, 160,000 have you worked with in the last few years, and what kind of size of permanent seatings are they doing?
Again, a lot of it has depended. In certain cities that have been smaller or similar size, they have, and they are not already in the arena business, they have made the step to do perhaps more of a similar size building to what you currently have, because it is a big investment, and they, again, are not in the arena business. You have been in the arena business for years and years here, and so I think that makes a difference.
5 to 6,000 seats?
6,000, so it's like 8,000 max. So, and the way we look at it, and the CSLs of the world look at it, is an 8,000 gives you kind of a small, mid-sized capacity. When you go to 12, especially with the way the concert market has been evolving in the U.S., you can get a lot of the big names, and you've seen that in other places, similar to Omaha, a little bigger, but you can start to get the big name concerts as well as still keep the building small and intimate for all your home anchor teams, your home sports teams.
And how physically do you do that when a lot of those anchor teams are 3,000 to 5,000?
There's a lot of different ways, and we talked about that in our interview, and it's a long discussion. But I mean, basically the key is you need to be able to downsize the arena aesthetically. We did that up in Winnipeg, where basically we designed a building there for 15,000. They have the ultimate goal of getting an NHL team back, but they have a minor league AHL team, so they curtain the upper bowl, and it works great. What they do is they allow first game in playoffs, you can use the whole bowl, but they just use the lower bowl, and they have the suites at a mid-level. So there's a lot of different tricks you can do, and we'll try to give everyone those choices and say, here's good principles of what we think we want to do here, and get the input from people, the teams, the events, to make those right choices. So that is part of what we're doing in the first 2 or 3 months, in addition to looking at the sites, is saying, now that you want 12,000 seats, what exactly are the components that will make this a really successful building? That's our goal.
Of the cities you've worked with in the last 5 years, can you give us some examples of those?
Yeah, basically, again, Winnipeg was a good example, and they did 15,000 fixed. St.
But
Louis.
much larger than Sioux Falls, obviously. Winnipeg's a huge city.
Although it is huge, but when we started Winnipeg back then, I shouldn't be quoted, but they were considered a backwater in their business because they had about a 50-year-old building, and now they have the third busiest building in Canada since we've done that. So it's been massively successful. We worked one for 12,000 seats in St. Louis University. It's not downtown, it's on campus, and it's about 10 minutes from downtown, but it's on the St. Louis University campus. That one was 12,000 seats. We've done a number at 8,000 and 9,000. In Vegas, we did Orleans Hotel, which is about 10 to 11, Mandalay Bay, which is 12,000. So 12,000 is a good capacity to get that great mix of events.
Any cities in the 150 to 160,000 range that you've done recently?
Yeah, but I mean, they have made more of the choice of let's do an 8,000-seat arena.
And what cities would those be?
The cities we've done, I think we've done 9 buildings in the last 5 years for them. So Broomfield, Colorado, Rio Rancho, New Mexico, which is just outside of Albuquerque, Prescott Valley, Arizona, Cedar Park, Texas, Allen, Texas, Dodge City, Kansas, we're doing one in Wenatchee, Washington. I'm probably missing one. We're doing one in Bangor, Maine right now.
Thank you.
Councilor Rolfing.
Yes, Don?
Don't leave. Okay.
Yes, don't leave. In any of those cities or a multitude of those cities, have you been taken with the responsibility, given the responsibility to choose sites?
Yeah, a number of times we have. And again, sometimes it is 2 totally different sites or 3 or 4, and we've done this same kind of study over and over.
Okay.
And sometimes it's like, okay, we have a general area, and what are the best 3 or 4 locations of here's the building versus the parking and how you would arrange it. So, but generally we have done similar to what we did in 2005 here of do an objective analysis on the sites, and there's a number of factors that come in that will affect the success of the building as well as the cost of the building, and we try to objectively analyze that, traffic, parking, all those kind of big issues that really affect the success of arena long term.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Erpenbach.
Question either for Mr. Mayor or for Mike Cooper. I'm looking at the RFP evaluation team, and I just want to clarify, because this is the number one question I'm getting from citizens at this point, is who's going to decide in the end? Will this RFP evaluation team be part of the people who choose that, or are they just going to choose the economic group, the economic study group?
Councilor Erpenbach, good question. Just like the last group, like Mr. Hughes talked about, he was on a team of 10 that ultimately got the 10 firms down to 3, and then got the 3 firms down, of course, to the firm that was selected. That same process is going to happen here, in that we will have these folks that will ultimately take all the proposals that are submitted. These will be the firms that want to do the economic impact analysis for this particular project and for our city. So they'll take all those firms, they'll evaluate them as best they can. They'll get it down to a short list of potentially 3 firms, and then ultimately they'll bring them in to another interview, and they will select the firm that will do the economic impact analysis study for our city.
So then we have the architect and engineer people, and we have the construction manager at risk people, and then eventually we have that economic evaluation group. And are they all going to get together and they're going to take this all off our table and they're going to say it's going to be this big, it's going to look like this, and it's going to go in this place?
No, ultimately, when we're all done here as City Council, it's going to come back to you good folks. It will. Ultimately, the vote, if you decide to allow a vote to happen, it'll ultimately come back through a proposal that we'll present to the people of Sioux Falls, and then ultimately, if you want to move that forward, they will vote on that. So no, it won't be Mr. Detlefs. He won't decide where it goes and what it's going to look like. He's certainly going to provide us as much information as they can. It won't be the firm that we select for to build it, even though we've got 5 great groups of of people, all Sioux Falls, that will ultimately build this for us or be in charge of it. They're not going to make the decision. It won't be the group that we hire to do the economic impact study. It'll ultimately be the people of Sioux Falls that will ultimately put this all together. And again, it's going to be an arduous process, but it'll be one that when we add all those puzzle pieces together, we can ultimately move it forward. But there's a lot more dialogue. One of the things that, again, I'm intrigued by is that because this is not their first rodeo, they can tell you stories, some of them horror stories, yes, about how this process works. You know, we're not unique, Sioux Falls. We're not. There are going to be challenges that we've already faced, and there will be challenges that we will face over the months to come. But ultimately, you can see cities do make things like this happen, and we can find a way to do that as well. So Councilor Uppenbach, we'll throw all those puzzle pieces together, and ultimately we'll come up with a recommendation that we'll present to you, and then you folks can decide whether we want to take it to a public vote or not.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
A couple other questions. This RFP evaluation team for the Economic and Development Impact Analysis Study, you just developed that team. I would just urge you to maybe include a broker or some kind of a commercial realtor, somebody who knows the market, when they're evaluating this team on whether or not that team gets it. I would just urge you to include that into the mix to help when they pick the team that's going to decide, or maybe Mr. Cooper can add to that.
Thank you.
As we talked about the two-step process to do this economic and development analysis, the second portion of that would actually involve commercial brokers.
Okay.
And so we felt it would be a conflict to have one of them, or it would limit their ability to be part of a proposal. So that's the reason.
Okay. And then as well, one other question is the $500,000 that you've been allocated for this project. Is it public knowledge to share with us what you're going to pay St. Combs Deathless?
We haven't determined that yet. Remember, Councilor Jameson, we don't have a signed contract, and that's why I don't want to run these folks off. We'll be in negotiation stages. That's why one of the things that Mr. Cotter talked about was that we are actually looking at other resources that can help us negotiate a solid contract with not only their firm but with the others. So as we determine that, we will certainly be transparent, Councilor Jameson, in terms of what ultimately the contract was decided for. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You have been kind enough, gracious enough to allocate $500,000 to help move this project forward. If ultimately it's determined that we need more, I will come back to the City Council and ultimately ask for more. I will. But right now, I'm not even going to hazard a guess because we're still in contract negotiations.
Hazard? Coke hazard? Did you get it? I got it. Councilor Brown.
You talked a little bit about the timelines and maybe softening that a bit. Does that mean that you're not firm on the 2014 timeline that you talked about early on in the process?
And Councilor Brown, I'll be cautious here. Firm, I think, is too strong a word. Goals, yes. Firm, no. We've laid out a couple of alternatives. We can certainly make this happen for the City of Sioux Falls in 2014 if the City of Sioux Falls decides it's what they want to do. But again, we're not going to rush this process to meet a target date. We want to do this thing correctly. This is going to be one of the most important investments our city will make. Certainly be one of the most expensive, and ultimately we want to do it right. But I will also say this. Been talking about it for 12 years. And as I've said before, the people of Sioux Falls are ready.
Councilor Intiman.
Just a statement here. Speaking as a person that's served on a couple of the previous task forces, and with the challenge and the promise and the questions that we had for you when we went into the budgeting process about where, how we're going to be spending our $500,000 and what your plan was at that time, And of course, the plan was to develop a plan. And as I see this unfolding, I'm exceptionally excited, speaking as a person that served on the previous task force, where we identified needs and what we thought our community needed, and the good people that served on that group, a broad base of citizens. I'm looking forward to the next steps as we go forward here. I think it's exciting times for us, challenging times, but I think there's some great opportunity here, and I'm looking forward as we go forward to seeing this unfold. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Entenmann.
Okay, seeing no questions, you're off the hook, Mayor.
Thank you very much, and again, we're so excited. Thanks for learning on this journey as we learn. Make it a great day.
Okay, well, let's move to a vote. We need a vote to go into our executive session at 5:04. A motion.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to adjourn into executive session.
And you need to state the reason.
Oh, for
personnel reasons.
I would second Erpenbach.
Okay, be it noted, it's 5:04. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Mr. Chair, I'm concerned.